Today's podcast is brought to you by the Monkey Method app. This is an app brought to you by Power Monkey, and what we've done with this app is really exciting. We're really proud of it. Something we've been working on for a number of years. It basically allows for skill development plans to be put into place in one easy to follow along format. We have over 1,200 videos in there that are free to access. Even if you don't buy one of the plans, they're always there in the palm of your hand, very easily accessible technique videos. Along with that, we have a bunch of gymnastics and weightlifting plans in there that are all assessment based. So it's not a one size fits all plan. You can go in there, do the assessment, and figure out what category, what level you are based in according to what your starting point looks like. You'll have a tailored program, something that's a little bit more individualized. I'm really proud of it and hope you guys take advantage of it. Hey everyone, welcome to another Power Monkey podcast. On today's episode, we have two of the great CrossFit Games competitors, one being Noah Ohlsen, who finished second at the CrossFit Games back in 2019, as well as Elijah Muhammad, who was a great individual competitor at the CrossFit Games multiple times and is now an affiliate owner. We go into some really important topics on this one, talking about race, not only within the United States and what's going on right now in communities all across the country, but specifically what racial issues are looking like within the fitness industry and specifically within the CrossFit community. The last couple of weeks have definitely bubbled up some specific issues pertaining to CrossFit headquarters that need to be discussed, need to be dealt with, and hopefully this podcast helps open up some eyes and open up some ears as to how important these issues are. Hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, here with another Power Monkey podcast. Super excited to have both Easy and Noah on with us today. Thank you guys so much for jumping on. Appreciate the time.
Happy to be here.
Easy, we're going to start with you. I think the easiest way to kind of get this conversation started is actually just bringing up a post that you put up the other day on Instagram. It's quite a visual. It says a lot, and I don't know if the listeners out there have had a chance to actually see it, but it's you. Looks like walking out of your gym with a gallon of gasoline in one hand and your CrossFit banner in the other hand, and it just says, "They say a picture's worth 1,000 words." And just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that post specifically, and if you did go ahead and actually burn that sign.
Yeah, it was just a photo, man. It was a logic thinking photo along with a lot of emotions tied to it. But it was me processing everything that was going on. And I hadn't been speaking out. I hadn't been saying anything about CrossFit. And that post was just exactly what it said. It was a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can take it how you want to take it. You can dive into it. It's the same context as what I think of Greg Glassman's tweet, right? It was a subliminal tweet. Like, he didn't say anything crazy. It was just he tweeted Floyd 19. You take it how you want to take it. You know, like, whatever he meant is what he meant, and that's what he stood for. So when I got a hold of that tweet and I read it, a lot of things came up in my mind. Like, oh, he didn't mean it like this, or maybe he meant it like this, or, you know, gosh, this really, I think he meant it like this. So it was like, you really can't say anything because there's no context to it. There's nothing behind it. And so it's the same thing with that photo. It's like, there's no context to it. You could say maybe CrossFit's burning down because the photo is me walking out but not actually burning it, right? It's maybe CrossFit's burning down. You know, you can basically say, oh, he's not affiliated, he's getting away from CrossFit. However you want to take it, you take it. And for me, I know where I stand and I know how I felt and I know what I think about kind of what's going on in the CrossFit, you know, upper level. So that was just me making a post and kind of, I stand with the people. You know, I'm not a corporate guy. You can kind of take it how you want to take it, but I stand with the people, and especially my people, the Black community, and that's just kind of how I felt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, totally understand that, and I can respect that viewpoint. I'm kind of curious also. I mean, your perspective is really unique here in the sense that, you know, obviously you're a Black business owner, you're an athlete, but you're also an owner of, you know, of a CrossFit affiliate. You know, so you're kind of intermixed within this situation from a lot of different viewpoints. And from the owner's perspective of having a CrossFit affiliate up to this point, what was the response from your members and your coaching staff, and kind of what was everyone else kind of around you in that community kind of thinking as you've been kind of going through this over the last couple of weeks?
They're in full support, man. They support me. You gotta remember, like everyone stated, man, CrossFit is going to continue on with or without a Greg Glassman. Like regardless, like we all understand the methodology, we all believe in it, we all teach it. We like CrossFit allows us to stand alone anyway. So when I came back into the gym and members, of course, you gotta remember my membership is not a lot of CrossFitters. Like they do it, but they're not into like what's going on in CrossFit. They don't care. They just come in, they work out, they know me, and that's what they do. So a lot of them just kind of are blind to it. So I tell them like, hey, look this up or check this out. This is what's going on. And this is why I stand where I stand. And this is what I believe. And this is how we're moving forward. And they don't care. They support it. They love our community. They love what we have here. And that's all they really are focused on, regardless of my standpoint or, you know, what I may do or say, as long as I'm treating them well and doing exactly what they are paying for and exactly what they believe me to do, they're good. So it hasn't really been much of an uproar. Everybody's voiced their opinions. We have some members that aren't with it. They're kind of like, I don't know if you should. And we kind of give our perspectives, and we keep it very, very respectful because that's the relationship we built, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What I want to do before we move too much further is go over some words that are being used on this topic, Black Lives Matter, and everything that's going on and what we're specifically talking about today, because there are some words that are thrown out there that, you know, I didn't even know the definition of. I had to look them up, or I had to, you know, have other people explain them to me. And I think it's important for the listeners to hear them. But before that, you know, talking about CrossFit, Noah, you've been, you know, speaking out in support of the Black community. And I wonder, from your perspective, is there forgiveness for Glassman on this? And is there forgiveness for CrossFit in general?
Man, that is a tough question. And it's one that I've been asking myself a lot lately. I think similar to Elijah, I am for the people, and they maybe are not my people in the sense that I don't have Black skin myself, but I love all people. And I just wanted to try to stand up and speak for a group of people that felt like they were being underrepresented or mistreated or just hurt in any way. And as everything's progressed, I think, like Elijah said, there's definitely a lot of emotion that plays into it. And at times people have said, oh, don't make an emotional decision. And I think that I've started to wrap my head around the fact that there's not really such thing as an unemotional decision in something that you care a lot about. Like there's going to be emotions involved because it's something that we've all committed our lives to. For me, the last 10, 11 years, for a lot of you guys, it's about the same amount of time. So it's very meaningful. It's very emotional. And regarding forgiveness, I think that's something that I like to try to take into account in whatever situations in life. I think we all make mistakes. I think it's easier to forgive somebody when you believe that it was truly a mistake and not really a representation of their character, especially when they seem remorseful for their mistake. All that being said, it doesn't seem as though those factors really play into the equation. So it's a little bit harder to talk about forgiveness. And right when I was on the brink of starting to really consider forgiveness, a whole bunch of other stuff started to appear on the surface, and it looks like there's more to come. And so that just makes it even more difficult to forgive so many things all at once.
Right. So, like I said, before we dig too much deeper into this, you know, some of these terms that are being used, and quite honestly, that are confusing to a lot of people, they're turnoffs to a lot of people. That I think they push white people specifically away when you say something like white privilege, right? But even a word, the word or phrase systemic racism, I want to define that real quick. Systemic racism is a form of racism expressed in the practice of social and political institutions. It is reflected in disparities regarding wealth, income, criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, and education, among other factors. All right. Let's define now racist. What is a racist? Prejudiced against or antagonistic toward a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group. typically one that is a minority or marginalized. Another one that's being used, or what is being said, is that we want you to be anti-racist. And I think when a white person is told that, for example, it's easy for them to respond and say, well, I am anti-racist because I'm not racist. So I just define racist for you. I'm not a racist person, so therefore I am anti-racist. And quite honestly, when I first heard that, that was my initial thought. I was like, yeah, I'm anti-racist. I'm with you. I'm here. But what it really means is, from my understanding, and you guys please, jump in if you have a different definition or a different understanding or something maybe better. But being anti-racist is saying that it's not just okay being okay with the individual Black people that you know. We all have, the three of us as white men all have many Black friends that we care about. But it's not just with being okay with them. It's not just supporting them and having a relationship with them. They're your friends, but it's about being aware and actively playing a role in making changes in the system. Go back to systemic racism. So being aware of those things that are happening, and quite honestly, talking about systemic racism again, I'm sitting here in my own little world thinking that everything is at least mostly okay, and not even being aware of the things in the system that are working against the Black community. So for me to take a step and be anti-racist, I need to learn more about those things, and I need to maybe head towards doing something about it. But again, one of those words or a phrase that really, I think, causes white people to completely shut off is white privilege. Because if you say that to a white person, if I hear that, when I heard that, my initial reaction is, hey, man, I've had a lot of struggles in my life. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I overcame a lot of things. So therefore, I'm not privileged. I don't have the white privilege that you're talking about. But I heard someone say it the other day, maybe a better word than privilege is advantage. And another thing that I heard, a good analogy that really brought it home for me, is that it's like if you're a fish in a stream. If you're a fish, you're swimming with the current. Maybe we can say those are the white community. That doesn't mean that you don't have to dodge and go around a rock, or you don't run into a rock and you don't still have to work. It just means that you're not swimming upstream. And the reference there is the Black community, with the things that are being put in place in our system. So it's not saying that every life doesn't matter. It's saying Black lives matter in the sense that maybe things still do need to be worked on and evened out a little bit. So with those definitions in mind, Elijah, coming back to you, what has your experience been with, systemic racism, and can you give us an example of how that's played a role in your life?
Yeah, man. I just recently had I'm not gonna say an incident, but like my daughter came home and she's doing really well in school, but she's struggling in some math areas, and so I have to work with her with her math, and she came home and she was like, "Oh, we got to do a report." And I said, "Oh, cool. What we got a report on?" And she says, "On the Pilgrims and the Indians." And I have to do a report, on the Indians. And I got so mad. I got so upset inside that I had to like control. Like I had already said something to her, so I already know she has now taken in the frustration that I have with her doing a report on the Pilgrim and the Indians. But the reason why I was mad is because, and this was before all this stuff jumped off. This was before all the CrossFit stuff, or the situation that we're in now. But the reason I was mad is because I was like, man, that's the same stupid shit I had to learn. Like I had to go over this same dumbass stuff over and over again, and there's nothing more to it. Yes, teach me about the Indians. Yes, teach me about what happened and why we celebrate these holidays, or what the truth is. I need that. I need that part of American history too. But it's like 15, 20 years later, my child is still going through the same things and learning the same things that doesn't teach her anything about her people, or, her history or her background, which is a part of American history. Mm-hmm. And it just sucked when I was just kind of like, and so that is a part of the systemic racism that we're talking about, where it's like, well, we have to learn about these type of people, and we have to learn about, I mean, I say these type of people, but these cultures or these ethnicities and what they went through. But where's the same for ours? And then she comes home and I asked her, I said, every day I want you to go to school. And I want you to ask the teacher, would you learn or would you teach me? Or would you teach the class about any African-American heroes or heroines that came, that kind of are, that kind of you don't know about? And she came home and she was like, yeah, we learned about slavery. And I was like, oh, what the, like, I know, like, they're always going to teach you about slavery. Like, that's a part of the systemic racism that plays a part. They want you to think you're here to serve. That's it. They want your mind to think, oh, these people were here to serve, and this is what Black people do versus what white people do. That's it. And so we go back, and I said, hey, talk to him, ask your teacher. You know, be respectful, just ask your teacher. I just want to see what she says. I know if I talk to her, it may not come out the same as if my child talks to her. And that's a student she loves. Like, she loves my daughter, and my daughter loves her teacher. And she comes home and, you know, it's, oh, well, we talked about Martin Luther King. I'm like, okay, like, that's great, you know, but you already knew about Martin Luther King, right? Because Daddy taught you about Martin Luther King, and Daddy taught you about slavery and all those things. And I said, I want you to go to school and ask her about things that you may not know, or things that aren't regularly taught in school. And it's just like the same old things over and over again that are conditioning our kids, that are conditioning not just Black kids, but white kids also, and other kids, that white people are superior. And that thing carries on. She's already in a school with predominantly white kids, in a school with predominantly white teachers, in a school with a white principal, and everything she's seeing, besides when she comes home, is white people in power. So it's like, now I have to balance this out and play the role of introducing her to everyone Black. But why isn't the school system doing that? Like, why isn't the school system teaching that? So that's the part where it becomes like the systemic part of racism, where it's like, okay, we're only going to teach these kids what we want them to believe. And like, if you think about it, like, I know, why is every school predominantly white teachers? Like, no one can answer that question. Are you telling me there's no
Man,
go ahead.
I actually listened to a really interesting podcast on that recently. And it didn't have the reason, but it kind of details the history of the desegregation of schools and the way that process happened. And it's terrible, but it sounds like a reason that during the desegregation of schools, they basically took the Black schools that had Black kids and Black teachers, and they basically shut down the Black schools and dispersed the Black students into the white schools. And then when they were deciding on which teachers to keep, this was in one particular school district, and I'll send you guys the link if you're interested to get more detail on it. But basically, they released all 11 or 12 of the teachers from the Black school. They said that they were not as qualified as the other teachers. And obviously that the underlying theme there was the racism, but it even deeper into that, they talked about how that was the wrong way to go about it, that putting Black kids in all white schools with all white teachers, they didn't have the support and love that they needed. They didn't have somebody that was on their side, somebody that they could look up to and relate to. And so the guy that was doing the podcast believed that the desegregation of schools should have actually started by implementing Black teachers into white schools and then starting to put the Black students in as well. I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but it's really, it was interesting to me to hear about the history of that and how that probably has carried itself on all the way up until now. Like you're saying, there are maybe much more white students or white teachers in schools than there are Black teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the educational component that you're talking about, Elijah, is just such a huge factor. And, you know, I find myself, and it seems like a lot of the people that we've been speaking to recently have been very, very proactive about trying to educate themselves on this thing that for a lot of white people is invisible. Like Chad was saying, we don't deal with it on a regular basis, right? So we don't really know what it's like to grow up a Black person in America. And now we're being shown on a much more regular basis exactly what it's like, and the disadvantages that are kind of just from the moment you start out in life are part of the way that you have to grow up. And educating ourselves is such an important part of it as a kid. Have your daughter going through school, making sure that she's educated on the truth that happened. Why did we get to this point? How do we get to this point? But also as adults, how do we educate ourselves to be able to break this cycle of the thought process of what we've already kind of gotten to the point in our lives thinking about, and say, how can we start to kind of rearrange our thought process to be more accepting? And I think this is an important concept here of being more, we always talk about being tolerant, right? Tolerant is the most basic form of interacting with someone. Someone who's not like you and you being tolerant of them is the 0 point, is where you should be starting from. But really what we want to try to work towards, not only being tolerant of someone that's different from you, but being accepting, and then eventually building to a point where we're actually celebrating those differences. And I think that's a really important concept of not just being tolerant. I think it's such a basic viewpoint. Tolerance is really one of the things that we want to break through. And yes, it's understanding, being tolerant, building towards acceptance, and then eventually celebrating those differences. And for me, and I'm curious what kind of, Noah, from what I'm seeing on your social media, the educational component has been something you've been, posting nonstop about, which is amazing. But what you guys think about trying to not only educate the next generation, the kids growing up now, but also what we can be doing to educate the adults who are unaware of these things that are going on.
Yeah, I would definitely let Elijah speak to that. Just to touch on it briefly, the reason that I've decided to try to kind of share some of the stuff that I've learned is because my first instinct is to ask a lot of questions. And I was doing that. And you guys may have heard this already. And Elijah, I don't know if you felt this, but a lot of Black people were saying, hey, we're tired. We're doing a lot of work on our end, and it's not our job to now educate you and try to fill you in on how you can help. Like, you've got to take some initiative. And Chad, this goes back to speaking about the word anti-racist. To me, being an anti-racist means engaging in the fight, not just sitting on the sidelines and watching it all happen, but stepping up and kind of taking some initiative on my own to do the research. And while I'm absorbing it all myself, why not share it with everybody so they can kind of start that process themselves?
It's draining, man. That first week when everything kind of kicked off, and then and I would go home and I would just be out of it, man. I told my wife, I was like, I don't feel like I'm dad right now. Like, I feel like I'm not doing what I normally do with kids. I'm not interacting, engaging the way I normally do. Like, I was asking my daughter, like, hey, can you watch the boys for me? And dad just needs some rest. And I'm never that tired. I'm never too tired to do stuff with my kids. And man, I was worn out. I went to go get a money order from Hy-Vee, and I stopped the car and I parked the car, and I don't even remember falling asleep. I just fell asleep in the car. And, my kids are in the car with me. My dog was in the car with me. And for people that don't know, like, my kids are with me all day long. Like, my wife works, and I come to the gym, train, hang out, go play with them, get some paperwork done, coach classes, and they're just with me all day. So we were going to Hy-Vee to get a money order, and as soon as I parked the car, I just don't remember falling asleep. I fell asleep, and I knew my body was shot. I knew it was tired, drained, and I could feel it every night. And every day I woke up, I was kind of like, okay, I'm got a little bit of sleep, I'm ready to go again. And I just didn't know I was that drained from answering messages on Instagram and emails and talking to people about it. And I asked my daughter, I was like, how long were we here? Like, how? She was like, oh, you've been asleep about an hour. I was like, we've been sitting here for an hour. She's like, yeah, I just told the boys to, sit back and play on their phones. And I just thought I would let you rest. You're tired,
Man.
At that point,
that's a good daughter right there.
Man, listen, she's a champ. Man. But at that point, I knew. I said, as much as I want to give as much information and help people, and like, man, yeah, like you said, no, like, people have to do their own research. They got to step into the fight, and like, we need you to. Like, regardless of anything, like Martin Luther King did it, Malcolm X did it, all these people, the Black Panthers, they were all fighting for the same thing. And the difference between them and now is I think they didn't have as many allies as what the Black community can have now with the white community, because we live amongst each other, because we have so many biracial relationships and so many, like, the world is just different now. And I think, no, buddy, hold on. And I think like that's what we need. We need people to do their research, look up what the history was of America and where we were at, and continue to try to grow with us and help make the change that needs to be made so that we just feel equal. Like, we just literally, we feel equal. We feel like, you know, we have equal opportunity that white people have. And going back to what you said, Chad, the white privilege and white advantage. White advantage is kind of like, you have a step ahead of me. So you can look at it that way. The reason why is white privilege, because privilege ties into advantage, right? And it just basically, it's granting or availability. And because of your skin, you are granted an opportunity that a Black person may not be granted. And you have an opportunity to do things, or you have things that may be available to you that Black people may not have available to them because of the color of their skin. And I know people, it is tough to hear when you say privilege, right? Because in the CrossFit world, I have a privilege. People are going to have me do things, but it's because I'm a CrossFitter. When it comes to the world, it's like, okay, like, you have a privilege that I don't have. And by saying that, it's like, not only do you have a special right or an advantage, but you are granted an opportunity that I may not just be granted because the color of my skin.
Right.
And so that's why they use those terms.
For sure. And that's all really tough for me to take as a competitor. You know, like, I just think of it in terms of sport. Like, I don't even know if this is a good analogy, but I don't want someone to beat me because they're taking drugs. And on the other hand, I don't want to beat someone when they have any sort of disadvantage in their training or whatever else. I want everything to be even. And that's the way that I look at life too. Like, I want everything and everybody to be even. On a part of me can understand how this has all happened, as unfortunate as it is, because you're talking about a race that is number wise the large majority. And here's the thing, before all this, I didn't even know percentages of how many white people and Black people and everything else, but 60% of the population is white, only 13% is Black, and that's way smaller than I thought.
Is that in the world or the United States?
That's the United States. Yeah, that's those are the numbers in the United States. So, you know, the things that are happening and being appointed in the system are to, you know, feed the majority of the population, and that's such an unfortunate thing. And you talk about sport, Elijah. I wanted to see what your experiences with sport have been in general growing up and then going into CrossFit later on in life. Is sport or CrossFit in any way, and I know there's issues in the CrossFit community, but is sport in general, in your opinion, in any way an equalizer in this regard?
Sport is just something that unites people in general, which is super cool, right? No matter what race or no matter what ethnicity or culture. So me growing up in sport, I've only played sports with Black athletes. So most of the sports I played, there was maybe a few white guys on the team, predominantly Black. All my coaches were Black until I got to high school. And when I got to high school, believe it or not, it's going to be hard for some people to understand. I was told not to listen to my white coach because he was a white man. I was told to listen to the assistant coach because he was a Black man. And that's what I did. I listened to my coach. And of course, the words coming from the assistant are from the head coach regardless. So it was just something where I've never had a white coach. And I never really, I had a certain teaching. With that being said, I never felt like CrossFit was the sport. Like for me, for other people maybe, but I never felt like it was sport. Like when I play basketball, I feel free. Like I feel like my mind is not on anything else but basketball. Like when I play, it's this feeling of like I feel weightless of the world. And then when I take my shoes off and sit down, it's kind of like, okay, back to life. I never got that with CrossFit. I'm still chasing that with CrossFit for me personally. And it may be because it's a predominantly white sport. It may be because when I played basketball, I was playing with a predominantly black team, and that may play some factors. But I just sat down and thought about it. I went and played basketball the other day, and I was like, man, like, gosh, I just feel good right now. Like I'm not thinking about anything, nothing down. And when I do CrossFit, it's feelings like I do CrossFit to relieve this, so that I don't rage, so that I don't get upset, so that, you know, me and my wife are going through some stuff. I just need to sweat. I just need to squat. You know, the kids are just, you know, being kids, and I'm like worked up. And then on the other side, I started doing CrossFit because Froning did it. I was a strength and conditioning coach. I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. Next thing you know, Froning came along, and it was just that competitor atmosphere. It was like, I just want to beat you. Like you're supposed to be the best. The goal is to try to beat you. And from doing that, just one thing led to another, and I was like, well, I want to be one of the fittest in the world. Like that's a cool title to have. Like I just want to. I don't care if I win it. I don't care if I podium. I just got to get there. So as far as sport goes, I think sport is a huge contribution to breaking the division between ethnicities and cultures. But for me, I think a kid is gonna see sport and make them. They're gonna see who's in the sport, and it's gonna make them go toward that sport. And so that's why I think we play the sports we play and do the things we do. If that's answering your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And, you know, I guess that speaks to the importance of trying to bring more Black athletes into the CrossFit community. Would you agree with that?
For sure. I would love to see it. I have a lot of reasons why I don't think it will happen as much. But I would love to see more, because like Pat Bellner said in a video, he was like, we're finding the fittest CrossFitter, not the fittest person in the world. He was like, I guess he was a little frustrated with the commentary Dave Castro gave him or whatever. And he said, we're finding the fittest CrossFitter. And I laughed because I was like, yeah, like we are. Like, you know, like how do we find the fittest person in the world? You know, we grab the title and we call him the fittest in the world. But until the sport is universally diverse and we have all those different cultures, you might not know. But with that being said, the people that are the fittest, I kind of think they're the fittest. I think they can walk into any realm of any sport and kind of keep up with anybody. So I don't take that title lightly. I think for sure those people are the fittest in the world. But I would like to see more countries, more diversity into the sport to actually see like and kind of guarantee, like now we can guarantee that these people cannot be touched. They are the top athletes in the world as far as fitness goes.
Yeah, I find this to be a really important and interesting conversation. You know, one of the things that people gravitate towards mostly when it comes to CrossFit is the community. You know, like you were talking about, you don't really consider it a sport, it's a community. And I think all of us here probably have some of our closest friends and family because of being in the CrossFit community for the past 10 years plus. But like you mentioned, Elijah, predominantly white sport. You look at any of the marketing materials that CrossFit puts out, it's, you know, an Icelandic girl, you know, fittest in the world, blonde hair, blue eyes, looking good on the rings, doing a handstand, whatever it might be, or Fraser or Froning. It could be, you know, marketing towards the white community and saying, okay, this is who this sport is for. But I'm curious, what might be the reasons why? Because we see it in gymnastics too. You know, gymnastics is predominantly a white sport. And is it a financial limitation that doesn't allow for minorities and more Black athletes to participate? I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what might be the limiting factor in terms of it being more exposed to outside of just the white community.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you gotta remember the moment you know, the Olympics and gymnastics and big time gymnastics started posting their African American athletes, and these African American athletes start blowing up. You see more children and Black parents taking their kids to gymnastics now. So it's starting to become even more diverse now.
Absolutely.
As far as the sport.
Role models are such a big deal.
Yeah.
Such a big deal, you know? So, but you got to remember, like, these are Black females. You still don't see the Black male in gymnastics as much.
Mm-hmm.
But what role models do we have? You know, who do we have? Are they marketing us? Are they showing us? But guess what the NBA does? They show every single Black athlete. Guess what the NFL does? They posterize every single Black athlete. So these Black males say, you know, why would I be a gymnast? I'm going to play basketball, or I'm going to do this. I think the marketing is a huge thing. And on the CrossFit level, don't get me wrong, you still have work to do in your gym. As a gym owner, as a coach, you have work to do to make your gym, to add diversity to your gym. A lot of work to do, especially if you are a white person, period. Because if it's already a predominantly white sport and you're white and the owner, you're the face of it, or your coaches are, you're probably going to bring more traffic of white. So it's more on a white person to build the diversity in their gym, and it's going to be a lot tougher. But what CrossFit did is they postered their white athletes, predominantly white sport, more content on white people. But I look at it as like, do you look at it as you got more content of white people, or does a Chandler Smith just really stand out that much? He stands out drastically. And if he stands out drastically, there should be content on him. There should be coverage on him. Why do you think when Nike got into CrossFit, every Black athlete was under Nike?
Hey, E, can I ask you a question on that real quick?
Yeah.
Do you think that it is appropriate for brands like CrossFit or whoever it may be to now start to promote some of their Black athletes a little bit more? Or does it kind of almost rub you the wrong way to see it happening now, because it's almost as if they're virtue signaling and saying like, hey, look, we're going to highlight these guys now because of the time that we're in and we want to look good as a company. Is there a fine line between that? Like, hey, finally making some change and giving these kids a role model, or just trying to make yourself look good?
However you take it, man, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about the next generation. I'm thinking about my kids. And so if we change your heart and you start marketing Black athletes or put us on the poster, and then you kind of are like, oh, we're just doing it because we just want to, you know, fit in. And then my son is the athlete that touches your heart because he's a phenomenal man and a great athlete, and you sponsor him, and now you actually have a change of heart. I'm with it. I'm 100% with it.
Cool.
Even though your intentions weren't the best at the beginning, I'm 100% with it, because we can all have a change of heart. Going back to what you were saying, though, like, it's hard to forgive sometimes, but like at the end of the day, it's like, look, Greg, you made a mistake. Admit you made a mistake. Even if you don't admit you made a mistake, the reason why I said nothing about the situation is because I may not be the person to change Greg's heart. I don't know him personally. He can't tie anything to me. But if there's someone else in the position that knows him personally that may be able to speak some sense into him, or just change his perspective of how he sees things, go for it. And even though right now he's like, oh, you know, this is what I said and this is what it is, it's like 5 years from now, I might be like, man, change your heart, dude. Like, hey, dap you up, you know, like, you know, things come around, and just keep it moving. So it is hard to forgive, but it's like, it's something we all have to learn to do. I'm not going to hold that against them. Like, you got to remember, like, if I'm not saying Greg Glassman is, I'm not saying he is, but if he was, think about the day and age he was raised. He's much older than us. You got to remember, like, things just like what segregation, civil rights was in 1964, 68. Like,
right.
These are people that are still amongst us.
Yeah.
Like, that are still the power structure. So you just have to remember where these people were raised and where they grew up. And I'm not saying he is, but I'm just saying if people want to question it, it's just kind of like, I mean, my mom was not a huge person on like Black and whites like being together. She was raised in a different age, you know, even though she's come around now and she's changed her perspective now because her son is in a predominantly white sport with a lot of white friends, and now she's interacting with more white people. Her perspective has changed, but some people aren't really into that. They're not really ready for that. So we just have to remember that. And then as they come around, as these companies come around, you can't just be like, oh, now you want to do it. You gotta forgive, you know, they might have a change of heart, and everybody can have a heart.
Joanne framed that to me in a pretty cool way the other day. We were talking about that situation, and she said if they made a mistake and then they come around and they try to correct their mistake, and you don't offer them forgiveness and you stay mad at them for the original mistake, chances are they're probably just going to go back to their original behavior because their new behavior didn't yield a positive result. So I think you're right in a way that forgiveness and understanding will help people be able to grow and move on and do better in the future, hopefully.
With that being said, by no means am I giving him a pass for what he said.
Right.
Well, and that's such a great way to look at it, the way that you guys describe that, because I think there is still probably a lot of hesitation from companies and from the white community to do certain things that they'd like to do right now, because they don't want to be seen as, I'm only doing this because all this happened and I want to look good or I want to do the right thing. So, you know, those comments that you made, I think can be good motivation for some of the people that are on the fence about doing something in support of all this to go ahead and do it. I didn't look at it in that way. I was only looking at it as, hey, you know, probably Nike, for example, or whoever shouldn't do something right now. They should let things die down a little bit. So I'm glad that you said that, because with that perspective, there's no better time than now to go ahead and start trying to make changes, whether it's, like you said, whether it's just for the benefit of a company or whether you truly want to make change, whether you truly want to do something that is right. And Easy, you brought up the fact that, you know, of different ages, right? You said 1968. So really, like, yeah, it seems like a long time ago to us, or to me when I think about it, but really it's not very long ago at all. And there are still many, many people that grew up in an era where, you know, before segregation. So can you speak to anything that you think has improved, or anything that you think has gotten worse? Like you mentioned, one of the things that might be a little bit better, or what I got from what you said, is that you feel like this day and age you guys have more allies, but then on the other hand, something that is maybe the same or a little bit worse is the fact that there's still not as many Black teachers. There's still not being certain things being taught in the schools. So maybe that's the same, maybe that's worse. But can you speak to anything that is better and or worse than, say, it was in 1990, than it was in 1980, than it was in 1960?
Yeah, man, that's tough, man, because a lot of the same things are still happening. You know, like the things my mother experienced, I'm experiencing now, and it's like it's hard to say that. It's hard to say what the big changes are, because it's like, why am I experiencing this? Like, you fought for this. But the one thing that I will say that I feel like has changed is that I feel like we are able to live amongst each other, civilized. And that comes from me thinking that comes from people not seeing racism, like not understanding. That tells me that you've just been like living your life and not worried about it. I mean, even Black people. So we have a lot of Black millionaires. We have a lot of Black billionaires, or we have a lot of Black people that are successful and doing well, and that can stand out in a different way than back in the day. Back in the day, if you were rich, it didn't matter. You were still Black. You were still treated like a Black person. And that's a huge difference to me, where, you know, because the status of financial empowerment allows these people to move freely a little bit and speak and do things that they, back in the day in the 60s, if they had that same amount of money, they still would be treated the same. You gotta remember, like, there's people like Muhammad Ali, who was a world figure, that still couldn't go in some restaurants and eat because he was Black. They still wouldn't allow him in. And this is like the LeBron James of nowadays. You know, just imagine someone telling LeBron James, like, hey man, you can't eat here. Like, you got to go to the back, or, you know, you're not welcome here because you're Black. It's like, so those are some of the things that I have seen good change in, and, you know, what is different. But I mean, overall, at whole, it's hard to say, man. I think a lot of Black people are just living the best life for them and their family, to actually take care of their families and do what they need to do. Because, I mean, you think about it, like, we're not a part of the power structure at all. Like, a small majority. Like, we got a mayor here and there, we got a governor, a senator here and there, but when it comes to the power structure at whole, Black people don't really have a say. And when they do have a say and they try to speak up and they try to stand out, they're gone.
I'm curious if you think this moment in time right now is different than things in the past, or if if you've spoken to your mom about what was happening in the late '60s, and if what we're seeing right now with the prevalence of things like social media and the exposure of such horrific events like what happened with George Floyd, where everyone can watch and where everyone is seeing firsthand how terrible certain situations are. If we are at a moment right now where it's almost like a tipping point, where if this is something that is just going to blow over and come fall and we're going to go back into the same rhythms that we've been up to this point, or if this really is a tipping point into making our society better and making us being able to recognize what is actually going on. I'm curious if where we are within society and how much has been going on for so long, if this actually is a moment where we can actually see some really positive change.
I think we are seeing some change, and I think change is coming for sure. Is it here? Nah, not yet. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, me personally. But me personally, I'm just going to speak for me personally. And across the community, I've been getting a lot of love and a lot of respect on what's going on speaking out and informing people on what's happening in the world and what's going on. I've gotten some feedback where it's like, I had a guy who's blown out say that's ignorant, like, and it could have sparked an argument. It could have went drastically the wrong way, but we talked about it in direct messages, not on anyone's page, not publicly. We had our conversations and we were able to see that we just think drastically different. And at the end of the conversation, at the end of all of this, it just came to one simple thing: showing compassion for someone else's feelings. If you feel that way, you're allowed to feel that way. If you want to validate it to me, validate it to me. That's cool, but you're allowed to feel that way. And at the end of the day, I still respect you. Like, for a man, for coming to me, man to man, talking to me. Let's talk about what the differences is, and that's just what it was. So I think, like I said, man, I think it's going to get worse because the people at top, they don't want to see that change. I sat down and thought about it like this. This is really, really hard for me to say. If I was the first person, or not the first person on this country, but if I came to this country and it was untapped land, and I go call some of my homeboys like, yo, nobody's here. We could build an empire. Let's do it. It's only going to be for us. We're going to build an empire for us. We're going to rule this thing. Whatever we got to do, let's do it. That was the mentality. So in that mentality, I'm going to create a structure that supports us. No one else, because I'm not thinking about no one else. I'm thinking about the guys that I came in with here, and they're all black. I'm going to create a structure and a system that is going to support us and allow us to get power and stay on power. And once I create that structure, I'm not going to let anybody break it down. This is king of the hill. You can't come on top of my hill and get me off of it. And every single thing I create, I'm going to create it to empower us. And, one thing led to another where more people came. No matter how many people come into the country, I'm going to make sure that we stay where we need to be. And so the way the country was created and everything that went on, it's like, if you sit and think about it, it's like, what if you were the first one here? You would probably do the same thing. You would probably be like, I'm going to make this for me and my family. I'm going to build. It's the same concept of my household. I'm going to build everything for us. This is for us. Okay, my daughter goes and gets married and brings a little boy in. He's a part of the power structure. But hey, this is for us. So, we can't have that. My sons go get wives and they bring them in. It's like, okay, I know they're family, but at the end of the day, this is ours. This is for us. I built this for us. So I get the structure of where it's at. In order to make the change, though, we have to have the power structure where it's almost balanced. And so that's why I say I see it getting a lot worse than better, because who wants to give that up? Like, like everything we've worked for, us as men right here, everything we've worked for. And this is where I tell people, like, you better have compassion. If you have children, you better figure out how to have compassion, because you don't know who's coming through that door with your child. You don't know what ethnicity, you don't know who's coming through that door with your child. And if you're the type of person where you're like, I built this for us and these people aren't allowed, well, guess what's going to happen next? You're going to lose your child. That child's like, okay, I'm out of here. Like, cause this is the person that I choose. So it's just like, I sit and think about all these things and brainstorm of where we're at right now and where we're going to be. And I just, it's gonna get worse to me. As far as the CrossFit community, I've been using my voice because I've been getting a lot of support from the CrossFit community, and because it's a predominantly white sport. So I feel like, I don't want to say it's in my place, but I feel like I want to take that role to educate and teach people and create a system where it is very, very diverse and allow people to like understand each other a little bit better. Because these are conversations that, like, me and Noah, we've hung out multiple times. We've kicked it multiple times. Like, my daughter is a Noah fan. Like, he is one of the only people out of like Rich Froning that my daughter like knows by face, recognizes, remembers, and can almost tell his voice if he's like talking on the phone. Like, she loves him. And so in these times now, we're able to have deeper conversation to get to know each other a little bit better, to get to understand each other a little bit better. And I think that's what's going to continue to happen. And it's not going to be overnight. It may not be a year. It may not be 2 years. But as far as the CrossFit community, I'm not going to let this die down.
Yeah, well, hey, we're all Noah fans.
Yeah,
Hey, we're all Noah
that.
fans, so she's in good company, that's for sure.
Cam's the best.
So, we've talked about earlier, you guys mentioned that, there's a lot of responsibility in the white community to educate themselves and to take steps towards being anti-racist, that term that we defined earlier. Easy, I wonder, from your perspective, yes, I see the responsibility from the white community. Do you see that from your perspective, is there still any responsibility from the Black community, or what is the responsibility for the Black community in all this?
To continue to bring awareness to what's going on, to continue to bring awareness to white people of what's going on. A lot of white people live in that bubble. They live in that bubble. They just, like I said, man, you go to school, white teachers, white principal, white kids, church, white church. Like, think about how many white people, speaking of you guys right here, have went to an all-black church or attended an all-black church regularly. That may be Christian men. You've never thought to do it. You've never even stepped out of your comfort zone to do it. Think about how many people here have been to just been to a bad neighborhood and just hung out, or had a friend in a bad neighborhood that you were trying to change their life and get them on the right path. It's like, these are things that when Black people say they're tired or they don't want that responsibility, it's like, we've done it. A lot of people have done it. And then when we do try to come into the space, like, it's sometimes like, oh man, what's going on? Or why is this person here? It would be the same way as if Noah came to my neighborhood where I grew up. He would be looked at like, what is he doing here? Like,
man, it's interesting that you say that, E, because I was just thinking last night about more things that I can do, and Guido and I were talking, and we were talking about maybe going and hosting some CrossFit fitness classes in some of the like underserved communities. And that thought obviously occurred to me, if we're out there at a park in a predominantly Black neighborhood, are we going to be welcomed and accepted because we're trying to help and do something for that community? Or is it going to be kind of this weird vibe of, you don't really belong here? I don't know. It feels to me like the door is open there, and that wouldn't be the case as much as it would have been in the past right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I tell my white friends all the time, like, bro, if I ever take you home, just stay with me. Like, don't get me wrong. The neighborhood's much better than I grew up in, but it's just that they don't see white people as often. So when they do see a white person, it's like, what is he doing here? And the first thing they think is what? If you come into a Black neighborhood, what's the first thing white people are going to think? You're a cop. You're an informant. You're somebody trying to do something to harm us or put us in dangerous way. So
yeah, that sucks.
It's a lot of stereotypes, man. But all in all, going back to what you were saying, Chad, is like, Black people have tried and have done it. And even when we do it, we're uncomfortable. When I first started CrossFit, I'm not going to say I was uncomfortable because I was at Tennessee Tech University, where there was a lot of Black athletes. So I was still, but when I first got to Cookeville, Tennessee for school, it was different. Like, it was just this kind of like, I remember walking on the campus for hours and not seeing any Black person. And it was just kind of like, whoa, like, what's going on? But imagine a white person going to a HBCU, they would feel the same way. And so right now in the CrossFit space and right now with everything going on, it's just like, hey, like, I understand we're asking you to do your part and do the research. Our part is basically bringing you that information, bringing you the things that we've seen, that we go through, that is happening to us, so that you can actually process the information and understand what is going on in the world as you sat in your little bubble and never thought this was happening. And I think that's a big part, because think about it. If no one recorded that George Floyd video, what happens? Those cops go home.
Yeah.
That little girl no longer has a father. Those cops, I 100% guarantee if no one recorded that video, those cops go home. When people say things like Black on Black crime, why aren't we fighting for that? Why aren't we doing that? Because according to the system, when a Black person kills a Black person, it's like a 2-for-1 special. It's like, okay, we got one dead and another one in jail. Justice will be served. Someone made a post the other day and it broke my heart, because I always watched it and I didn't even know why I watched it. It was like, man, they made money. First 48 is all about Black people. It's a cop show about how fast they catch Black people doing crimes. And if you watch First 48, it is a predominantly white cop catching Black person in the hood for what they did in 48 hours. And it's like, you can't even convict a police officer who kneeled on a man's neck and killed him within the first 48 hours. And he's right there. He's right in front of you. And he's not running. And he's not hiding. And it takes us to burn down buildings and do all these things. And so the job of the Black community is to continue to bring you the information that you are not getting. I just talked to Kelly Starrett on the phone. Well, not talked, he sent me a video. He's probably going to release it soon. And I said, I'm glad you did this video, because I was just talking about this video. How many Black people do you follow on your social media platforms? How many Black people do you scroll and see on a daily basis in your social media platforms? Not even, and I'm going to take it a step further. Not even the people that you know. Take out the people that you know. Take out the people that you competed against or that was in the same sport as you. How many Black people do you follow on your social media platform? That's what you look at every day. That's what you scroll through all day. And so when he released that, I was like, dude, you're on the right path, because it's not going to be this, oh, the world's changed and everything's good. But it's all these little steps, these conversations that we're having. You going and doing research, me sharing something with you, you contacting me and asking me for information. It's just all these little steps that continue to play a bigger role in what we're trying to get to change. But when he said that, I was like, man, I can't wait for you to release that. Please tag me in it, because I guarantee most people scroll through their social media all day long and may not even see a Black person because they don't follow any, because their algorithm doesn't allow your Instagram to put in any Black people into your social media.
That's very interesting. And, some of that stuff that you talked about, there are some really good, interesting statistics, since I've been, obviously a lot of us are looking into this and researching now, and in that research, just seeing a lot of the statistics are very eye-opening, and hopefully the listeners will be motivated to go look at those a little bit. But, a lot of this stuff, easy, that, for years have been falling on deaf ears. Hopefully, a good in all this is that, maybe our ears are a lot more open now. Maybe we can hear some of these things and, jump on this train and become anti-racist again, that definition that we gave out earlier. To switch topics just a little bit here, Noah, I wanted to come to you, and we've talked a lot about CrossFit, of course, and some changes that have been made. Greg Glassman stepping down, Dave Castro being appointed and stepping in. What do you feel about that change, specifically Dave Castro being at the lead now?
I don't want to make any statements that are going to put me in a bad position. And unfortunately, that's kind of part of the problem that people have been saying with CrossFit for a long time. There's the fear of having spoken up and spoken against the power structure that you could get in trouble, or it could put you in a disadvantageous position. So I'm cautious with my words, but I will say that, again, thinking about the people and the general perception and population, it doesn't seem like most people feel like that was an appropriate change, or that it was significant enough. So I just am hoping that whether that change was made or not, that their actions can start to prove that they care, and that they start to do things that put the communities that are underrepresented and underserved in CrossFit a little bit more at the forefront, and give them a fair chance in our community.
Just on top of that, Noah, you recently came out saying that, you're not going to be participating in the CrossFit Games this summer if it does end up happening. You finished second last year. You're definitely kind of in that mix to finish up on the podium again, potentially even challenge Frazier this year. But stepping away and turning down that opportunity, it's a big deal. It's not something I think you've taken lightly, and it definitely is something that I'm sure you've thought about from a lot of different angles. But I'm curious, what in your mind, is there anything specific that CrossFit would need to do for you to be able to say, hey, I'm ready to go and compete again? I'm ready to say that, the games is something I want to be a part of, or is it something that needs to be done over time? I'm just kind of curious if there's something distinct that you would feel needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's one that I considered when I was first making the decision to post that and take that stance. And I couldn't at the time come up with specifics. There wasn't really anything that I knew would make, and it wasn't for me, obviously. Like, I didn't make the stance that I made and the statement that I made for me. It wasn't for my benefit. It was for that of others. And so it's not for me to say what the change that needs to be made is. And so I think that part of it is going to kind of just be this visceral reaction to whatever the change is made. If they do something that the community as a whole feels good about and wants to celebrate, I think that stepping back into the CrossFit Games would be the perfect place to celebrate those significant changes. And I'm feeling very torn, like I said before, between that place of potential forgiveness and being able to salvage CrossFit and the games and something that so many people have loved for so long. And then the other side of things is just lighting it all on fire and moving on. And I think that we're at this tipping point where I'm not sure which direction things are going to go, but it's definitely possible that it goes hard one way or the other.
Yeah, I think that's we're seeing that in other sports as well, right? We're seeing that with the struggle of trying to get the MLB season going, where the athletes are having a really big power struggle with the owners there. And the athletes, I think, are starting to recognize that they have a lot more power than they had in the past, and that they have the ability to kind of make some of these changes rather than just wait for the owners to do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what a lot of the athletes are going to decide. And I think that could sway some of the community. I don't know. It's been a whirlwind, to be honest. I know I don't want to make it sound like things have been as difficult for me as they have been for some other people out there, but it's a lot of the decisions and conversations have been overwhelming and difficult. And I hope they all lead to positive change. But right now we're in this limbo land where I'm not sure how it's all going to turn out.
Yeah, it seems like the next couple of weeks and months are going to be really interesting. And I think we'll probably have to keep our eye on exactly how things develop. I think you guys, as the headline athletes and the voices of the athlete side of things, are going to have a lot of sway and a lot of kind of way to persuade the conversation. So I thank both of you guys. I think you guys are just doing such an amazing job of letting the community that follow you and adore you guys know how important these issues are. And So, I mean, from our perspective, thank you for being a voice of on the right side of where this conversation needs to be going. And I think, Easy, you mentioned this a couple of times, but just having the conversation is so important, and us being able to kind of bring up topics that maybe are a little bit hesitant to have, or trying not to say the wrong thing, and just being able to say, okay, how do we approach this conversation, and starting in that direction will hopefully lead us to, coming into 2021 as a much better year, hopefully.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for, man. I think we can, man. And I mean, it may be a small scale. Like CrossFit is a very, very small scale, right? But I mean, I think we have the power. I think people are starting to see, even like Noah said with the athletes, I think they're starting to see their power and what they're capable of. And I think through that, people are going to be like, okay, let's go full throttle. Let's just go for it. It's just that, a lot of black kids and black people we got to learn these things from a young age. Like, so that's just, I think we can, though, man. I think our community is strong. The CrossFit community is super strong, man.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
I love that you, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Noah, please.
I love that we're still having this conversation. I don't know the exact timeline, but it seems like it's been a few weeks since the original uproar across the world, since George Floyd was murdered. And I would hate to see, like we talked about earlier, it just fade into the background and go through another wave of like back to normal. And I don't want that to happen. And so I want to keep having these conversations. I thank you guys for initiating it. I thank Elijah for having the energy to step back into the arena once again. I know you're tired and you're doing a lot. You're doing so much, man. So the fact that you're here right now is adding to that, and I appreciate you for it. So thank you guys for continuing the conversation, and I hope that people that are listening are willing to do the same, and to keep it moving forward in the right direction, not let it die down.
Yeah. I think that there's too many people out there, or my hope is that there's too many people out there that are fearful that it's just going to fall to the side and be forgotten. And so I think that's one of the motivating factors that we're currently facing. And it does seem like, again, I mean, I'm not knowledgeable on this stuff at all, but it does seem like this point in time is different. And there's, no better time in history than for things to have at least a launching point to start to try to change in that direction. And, what I hope that people get from this, if nothing else, is to at least go do a little bit of research, dig into some Black history, and look into the system a little bit, and learn something that maybe you didn't know before. I mean, I love learning new things, and usually that's about weightlifting or CrossFit, because that's what I do all the time. But, it's been just incredibly eye-opening to me, and a learning experience and a learning opportunity with everything that's gone on. And I'm only a little bit ashamed and frustrated that I didn't look into these things before, and that I didn't know it. But again, this is just such a great opportunity, great time in history for these things to fall into line and to happen. And guys, thank you so much for joining us once again. We really, really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. We certainly should have both of you on again on another topic. Just talk about athletics in general, CrossFit, weightlifting, all that stuff. Easy. I know that we normally ask what sport. Maybe we should go ahead and ask that question, Dave. Let's end on that, huh?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Before we do end, just to kind of finish with what you were just saying, Chad, an opportunity to learn. I was just informed recently, tomorrow is June 19th, Juneteenth. I did a little bit of research on that. Elijah, do you want to just give a quick background on Juneteenth and what that means?
Yeah. So Juneteenth is basically the day that the official day of the Emancipation Proclamation, where Black people were free. So Texas was the last state to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, and on that date we celebrate Juneteenth. So basically, what your 4th of July is for you is our Juneteenth. A lot of people don't know that history and don't understand that going forward of why Black people celebrated. African American is an African American celebration, not just African celebration, but African American, because that's when we were freed from slavery. And so that's why we celebrate Juneteenth. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. We'll be doing a celebration here in Iowa. We have a thing going on. There's some stuff going on in every state. Go on your Facebook page, go to the events page, find the Juneteenth, take yourself down there and enjoy the festivities of learning about the culture, being engulfed in African American culture and having fun. But my mother went nuts over Juneteenth, and we used to celebrate it as a kid every year. She used to sometimes dress us in African garments. It was super big. I got into CrossFit, and then it was like, 4th of July, hero workout, red, white, and blue. And I was just kind of like, man, like, people probably won't understand, like, this really wasn't my thing growing up. But like I said, just being compassionate with understanding where they come from, why they celebrate it, and why it's so big to them allowed me to say, you know what, I'm going to celebrate it too. But yes, no, thank you for mentioning that. Tomorrow is Juneteenth.
I'm excited to celebrate, man.
Just check it out at some different places. Wherever you live, I'm pretty sure there's something going on. So just check it out, read up on it, and it's a great holiday. They're trying to make it a national holiday too. So,
yeah, I saw some big companies actually even giving off days of work now and treating it like a national holiday, as it should be.
That's awesome, man.
Love it.
So we did shirts. We did Juneteenth shirts. You won't be able to get them because, of course, it's tomorrow. But we printed off some Juneteenth shirts for the community and people to have to celebrate and stuff like that.
Yeah, easy. What year was that? What year did that happen?
The Emancipation Proclamation?
Yeah.
I can't recall exactly.
I can tell you guys because I was just looking it up this morning. It was 1863 was when it was first signed. But the Juneteenth, it was 2 years later that in 1865, the Union soldiers went in and informed the enslaved people of Texas that they were finally free because they had they'd been kind of the plantation owners and stuff in Texas had been sweeping it under the rug and hadn't let the people know that they were now free. And so the June 19th was the day that they let them know, and that they celebrate freedom for everybody.
Oh, no.
There you go. Nice.
65.
That's it. Good education. And that's what we need. We need more education. And I tell you what, Dave, let's hold off because we're going to have these guys on again, right? So let's hold off on our last question and go ahead and get out of here.
Why do you even know?
Weightlifting.
Well, see, and I was just trying to be nice to Dave because I knew you were going to say weightlifting. I knew it. So I'll go ahead and take your vote now and later. Let's go ahead and ask Noah. Let's see, Noah, what discipline is better as an individual sport, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Wow, man, that's tough. My gut is telling me gymnastics because I know
go with the gut.
Yeah, that's what I know. Joanne wants our kid to do athletically first, like just because they don't prepare them for anything else.
So here's my thing. Here's my argument. I'm glad you said that, Noah. Dave, I know you may not see this in light. No matter what you do in life, your body is automatically processed to learn how to perform and move itself. You don't have to teach it. You just have to move it. And it's automatically going to do these things and pick up these things. No matter what in life, you're going to have to learn how to move an external object. And if you don't have the discipline and training to move that through weightlifting, then therefore you won't be able to do it. That's why.
There's a lot of people that I know that can't move for shit. There's a lot of people.
No. Let's go ahead and end it there. I was already easy. I was already.
That was actually the best response I've ever heard though for weightlifting. Yeah. So you might have to use that one, Chad, moving forward.
Oh, I'm still in that for sure. Absolutely. I'm going to make a quote out of that, and I'll quote you. Don't worry, I'll give you credit for it. But no, already a big fan, and I've got chills with just right now. So. You're my favorite, that's for sure.
Thank you guys, man.
But
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Let's go ahead and get off here. For the listeners out there, guys, be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com. Check out services and upcoming events. A lot of online stuff going on. Still getting ready for Power Monkey Camp in October as well. So don't hesitate to sign up for that. It is going. We're ready to bring you guys back out there. Also, check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness. Also at Dave Durante and at Ollie Chad. On behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.